Jack Miller now, of course, another quarterback in this battle this spring for the Gators. And hey, this injury, him diving into it, will a little more probably. I mean, look, we knew it was more serious once. Hey, he'll be back just in a couple of weeks. That was toward the beginning of last season, and then he's out almost the entire season. And finally, comes back for the bowl game. But we do get to hear from Miller on his injury last season, then getting his first start in the bowl game, and what he's working on this spring.
I mean, it definitely wasn't what I wanted or what I envisioned happening, but I mean, you live and you learn. I mean, I learned a lot during that time about myself and about my work ethic, so it was definitely good for me.
What do you specifically learn about yourself when you're, I guess, the game's taken away?
Yeah, just how much you really want to be out there and how much you shouldn't take it for granted, honestly. Finally got to play in a game and see what it's really like to start in a game, prepare for a game, and yeah, it just really took a lot from me. Kind of fueled my offseason. I figured out what I needed to work on all offseason, really, and what I need to get better at.
Like what?
Like just preparing mentally, defensive recognition, speeding up my footwork. Just game speed is so much different than practice speed. So just really getting used to all that stuff. But yeah, it definitely was not the performance that I wanted or how I envisioned it going at all. But, I learned from it a lot. And like I said, it really fueled me this offseason. I mean, I've been pissed about it since it happened. So making sure it won't happen again. I try to be there as long as I can all day, trying to meet with the coaches and really just watch as much film as possible and get this whole offense down. Because, I mean, I have a pretty good understanding of the offense now. Now it's about applying it to defenses and knowing what's good versus what defenses and all that type of stuff. Just the timing with all the receivers. I mean, Ricky coming back, that was huge for us. So really getting on the same page with him on every single route. And really just a lot of the other guys too, like the freshmen coming in, just I want to be on the same page every single play with all of them.
There's Jack Miller, and Will, the severity of that injury, I mean, I didn't include all of it there, and you're limited on the time that we're supposed to use for the sound bites here, but the extension of the recovery process, I mean, needed rehab throughout the season and in the training room and, having to regain strength in his arm. And he said initially, quote, it was a torn UCL, but there was a fragment of my bone that chipped off with it, so that made it more complicated to connect it all back in surgery. Really, the hardest part was just being able to bend it and all that stuff. It was really hard to get back to full capacity strength. So significant injury there for Miller, of course, pretty much missing the whole season until the bowl game. And at times, he couldn't even firmly grip the football. So once he was out of the cast, he had to use a piece of equipment there, and it was also on the sideline with youth footballs because of just the weight of a football. It needed to be a lighter size football. So he's on there throwing on the sideline with youth footballs. He says probably 4 weeks on the sideline during practice was just a youth football. He said it was the hardest thing. He said, I probably took anywhere from 7 to 8 weeks to really be able to grip a football how I wanted to. And quote, we're still working and still getting better. So of course, no surprise to see with all the players, all the transfers out for the Oregon State bowl game, Jack Miller, I'm pretty sure after hearing him talk about it, Billy Napier talk about it to a point as well in the last few weeks, that probably nowhere near 100% either in that bowl game, because as you said, they're still working on it. And through spring practice of him getting his arm strength back. So pretty serious injury there for Jack Miller through last year. And as I said, probably shouldn't put too much on him in the bowl game anyway, but this kind of confirms that even further.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've sort of gone back to is if you judge Kyle Trask on the 2020 Cotton Bowl, you probably wouldn't have thought he was very good either, right? So if that had been like his first ever start, you'd have been like, oh, what a bum. We got to bring somebody else in. Now, the fact that it comes on at the end of a just transcendent year there at quarterback in the COVID year in 2020, we all go, it's because everybody left and he didn't have his wide receivers and all that sort of stuff. But we ought to give Miller the same benefit of the doubt, right, when it comes back to that. Now, what I will say is that some of the mistakes that you saw in the spring game early, last year showed up in that Oregon State game. That has nothing to do with his arm. That has to do with decision-making. That has to do with getting things going at speed. That was the thing that really showed up on tape in the spring game, was that he was just a tick slow getting the ball out. His tight ends were getting drilled because he didn't quite get it out on time. He had an opportunity to hit the ball down the sideline, but he was a little bit slow getting the ball out. And so the safety was able to come over and break it up. Those are the sorts of things that you saw at the beginning of the year that also showed up against Oregon State. So, look, I don't think you can completely dismiss what went on in that Oregon State game, but I don't think you want to draw conclusions based on it either. And so, I think I already mentioned, I think there are opportunities for Miller to win this job based on some of the skills he has that Mertz does not. But obviously, Mertz has the experience advantage. And so we'll see how much Billy Napier weighs that when it comes to making a decision. If they're close, do you go with the guy who's been in the system for 2 years, or do you go with the guy who's got 3 years of starting experience at a Power 5 school? It's going to be fascinating to see sort of what happens if no clear front runner sort of emerges.
All right, and he's in this competition, of course, and here's him on the other quarterbacks.
It's been a really good competition. I mean, we both embrace it, and Max as well. We all love to compete, so it's been a really, really fun spring so far.
What have been the message from the coaches as far as the competition? Like, what are they looking for? What do they want in a quarterback? Have they told
just consistency, and I mean, it's an open competition, so whoever does the best, that's who it's going to be. So,
what was your reaction when you heard Graham was coming?
I embrace competition. Like I said, I love it, and I mean, it's just going to make all of us better. So there was really no reaction. Just come back and compete.
Did you know him or know of him?
Yeah, I knew of him, of course, but I didn't really know him personally. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on him and just what he brings to the position, his skill set?
He's a really good dude. He has a really good arm as well. So it's really cool to see somebody. He has a lot of experience as well at Wisconsin. So it's really cool to really learn from somebody too, because he knows a lot too. So.
3 dynamics here, Will, for the quarterbacks. You got one, Graham Mertz, the transfer, who's played a lot, and then Jack Miller, the transfer, who hasn't played a whole lot, and then the handpicked guy, Billy Napier's first quarterback recruit there, Max Brown. So interesting dynamic here for the quarterback spot. And I guess the difference through practice now, and Will, you did bring it up, and we brought it up, and I probably should have brought it up sooner since you did hit on that earlier. Was Miller has been the quarterback that I've heard the most about with the mobility and the scramble ability and hitting those passes while moving around at the quarterback spot for the Gators so far this spring. So he does bring that attribute as a difference maker, and he has been doing it so far in that role. I still don't think the arm talent there compared to Graham Mertz is there, but as you said, Will, maybe the playmaking ability, maybe the elusiveness there from Miller separates him just a bit in this competition. But I think there is some of the things that I mentioned, Mertz leaning on Miller because he's been here a year ago, but Miller leaning on Mertz too, just because of all the experience that he brings in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I like that he's saying that the competition's making everybody better.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, Miller isn't averse to competition. He wouldn't have come to Florida last year knowing it was essentially Anthony Richardson's job to lose, right? And so he's not afraid of that sort of thing. And that's what you want in a quarterback. And look, the reality is that you almost always are going to need 2 quarterbacks to get all the way through a season.
Right.
We saw it last year. Jalen Kitna came in and was able to do some nice things in that Florida State game to keep Florida alive on a couple of drives when Anthony Richardson went out. And again, that was just a very small injury to Richardson. He was able to come back in. But Kitna was necessary in order to keep things moving. And irrespective of who wins the job, these guys are going to have to do that at some point along the year. Somebody's going to get their number called, and we'll see how it goes.
Want more Gators Breakdown? Join Gators Breakdown Plus. Starting at $3 a month, get access to unique episodes, plus a blog, chat room, giveaways, shout-outs, and more. Gators Breakdown Plus is furthering the interaction with fans and listeners like you. Head to gatorsbreakdown.supportingcast.fm to join Gators Breakdown Plus today.